Welcome back to another episode of NRL by Jellyman here on Wednesday, April the 19th, reviewing round 7, previewing round 8, and also looking at some stats, consistencies, current standings, overviews, everything like that for your round ahead of punting on the NRL. Cracking straight into things, looking back at last week, last Thursday, the Dolphins versus South Sydney Rabbitohs. Dolphins 14, South Sydney 36. Obviously, what happened in this one, the Dolphins went up 14-6, and then they allowed a couple of tries early, a couple of sin bins happened, and then all of a sudden, South Sydney ran over the top of them there. It was mainly that taking advantage of the sin bins that South have done so well in the last 2 weeks, happening against the Bulldogs, both injuries and sin bin caused South to run over the Bulldogs. Same thing happened in this one. The Dolphins were in the game until I guess they weren't, and South just ran over the top of them. So although South Sydney haven't been that impressive this year, putting scores on in terms of against the top teams, they've shown that with a man down on the other side, they can then put a score on and continue on. Obviously, the Dolphins have a number of outs at the moment, which is contributing to a couple of losses in a row. But yeah, once they get a few of their players back in, Kafusi returns this week, but obviously Kenny Bromwich is out. But it's all sort of driven down to their forward pack and gaining metres through there. And then obviously the outside backs playing well. But, you know, Souths look good. Campbell Graham's looked impressive. Johnson, he came back and scored a try, as well as Latrell Mitchell's also been a bit dominant of late. Cody Walker does what he does as well. Next game, so Friday's game, obviously the Sharks versus the Roosters. The Sharkies win 22-12. And watching this one, wasn't that impressive of a game, to be honest. Obviously, the rain came about, but the Sharks held in there. It was 12-12 at one stage, and then sort of Blake Brayley crosses, and then the Sydney Roosters end up with having a sin bin, and then they get cross again, and then another sin bin. But it was mainly Sydney converting down their end of the field as well. Nico Hines did what he did. But yeah, to be honest, it was a really sloppy game for both teams. Sydney Roosters in terms of penalties, Corella in terms of holding on to the ball. But it was good for Corella to finally get a win against Sydney at home, and building into next week. Next game of the night was Sea Eagles versus Storm. Really good game, this one. Obviously, we do favour the Storm quite a bit in terms of watching them and enjoying them, being from Melbourne and enjoying their squad. But Manly came out with brute force. Simply just that battle of Riki. They brought that sort of mentality. 18-8 was the final score, which tells you, it was defensive from both sides. In terms of Melbourne, just a few costly sin bins sin bins throughout the game that really cost them this one. Travojevic and Croker scoring, but yeah, that real defensive penalties is what cost both sides, really. It's as simple as that, and obviously Manly getting that win at home. Moving to Saturday's game, so we had the Warriors and the Cowboys. Didn't get to watch this one as we were obviously playing footy, but from all reports and sort of watching the highlights back, the Warriors did what they needed to do. The Cowboys, they missed a lot of tackles and didn't have a lot of tackle breaks, whereas the Warriors made a lot of those tackles and had a lot of tackle breaks. So that's where the game was essentially won and lost there. The Cowboys, obviously, a lot of injury through their forward pack at the moment, which is costing them. And then in terms of, the Warriors, they're super strong through their forward pack at the moment. They're playing what they've got, also defending really strong as well. Next game was the Knights versus Panthers. So we obviously had the Knights 15, Panthers 16. The Knights scoring, 3 tries in that first 30 minutes, Toto bouncing back, and Salmon scoring one late, but really it was the Nathan Cleary clutch show, with a few penalty goals, a few late one-point field goals, and obviously that clutch last one there. Penrith didn't play their best, having a look back at it. They were sort of clunky in attack and are sort of allowing a lot of those tries early. But, if you look prior to the 76th minute, 1-point field goal from Tyson Gamble, they allowed all their points within that first 30 minutes, which says to me, within that first 30 minutes, they thought they were just going to turn up and win the game. Then they realised, oh, shit, the Knights have turned up here, and they really had to sort of grit and grind it out, getting the win in the end, as all good squads do. Next game of the evening, I actually went to this one, the Titans versus the Broncos. Titans 26, Broncos 43. A game of two halves, really. Gold Coast were impressive early on. I think it was something like 14-8 at half time, or even 14-6. But then the Broncos just turned it on at that 50th minute. Walsh, Arthars, Capewell, and then a sin bin. And then Mam and Cobbo also scored. Lemon getting one in there as well, but Canberra scoring one late to make it a little bit more, I guess, the scoreline a little bit more respectable. But essentially the Gold Coast allowing too many points, but also the Broncos allowing too many points. And sort of what it seems to the Broncos seem to be doing is, grinding through that middle part of the game, or the start and middle part of the game, and then just coming home strong in that last 30 minutes. They've done it in 3 or 4 games so far this season, and it's a really good sign of a good squad. But, allowing 26 points is potentially their downfall. If, that turns to, 10 to 16 points, to that 43 mark, it's a completely different looking squad, and premiership contending team as well. Moving to Sunday's games, the Raiders versus the Dragons. The Raiders 20, the Dragons 14. This game was very average to watch, not really exciting. A lot of poor attacking plays is probably the way we could put it. Obviously, the Raiders end up getting a win through a runaway try from Hudson Young, but they really shouldn't have been in that position. That's all we can really take away from that game. A couple of sin bins for the Raiders as well, which is good to hold on. But yeah, not too much to take away from that game. And the last game of the round was the Eels against the Bulldogs. Same sort of thing. The Bulldogs are run down by injuries at the moment, so take that what you will. Para win 30-4. They head up to Darwin this weekend as well. Obviously, Benzini scoring a try, Sevo, Double Moses, and RCG. They looked all right in attack, allowing that left edge try though to Alamotti he's not supposed to be a winger there, obviously did, but the Bulldogs just decimated by injury at the moment, so take away with what you will. Topic 2 is player and team consistencies. To look at the Broncos, they've obviously won 6 of 7 games, 44 plus total points in 4 of their last 6 games, and 28 plus points in 4 of the last 6 games, obviously a lot of those being wins. Cobbo 1 plus try in his last 5 games. Arthars 1 plus try in 3 of his last 4. Riki 1 plus try in his last 3 games. And also allowing tries to the right and left winger in their last 2 games as well. So both wins on the opposition. Look at them against the Broncos opposition. The Raiders 20 points or less in 6 of their 7 games. So obviously struggling to score points. Hudson Young 1 plus try in 3 of his last 4 games. And allowing tries to the left winger in their last 5 games. For the Bulldogs, 16 points or less in their last 4 games, obviously struggling to score the ball, a lot of injuries, etc., and allowed 80 points in their last 2 games as well. So obviously 30 points to the Eels and a fair amount of points to the Bunnies as well, allowing tries to the opposition right centre and opposition left winger as well, so down both sides. The Sharkies, they're yet to win back-to-back games this season, obviously coming up this week against the Bulldogs. That should be a win, so that should cancel out. Mulatalo 7 tries in his last 5 games, 1 plus try in his last 5 games as well. Nikora 1 plus try in 4 of his last 5, and they're actually allowing tries to hookers in the last 2 games as well, which is quite an interesting stat. The Dolphins, they've allowed 96 points across their last 3 games. They come up against the Titans this week, who know how to score the ball. 14 points or less in 3 of their last 4 games as well. Tabuai didn't score last week, but 1 plus try in 6 of his last 7. Asako 8 tries this season in 7 games. They're actually allowing tries to the right winger, right centre, and also left winger, so both on the edges there. The Gold Coast Titans, they've allowed 24 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. Phillips having 1 plus try in his last 2 games. Khan Pereira 1 plus try in 4 of his last 5 games. And then also 2 plus tries in 3 of his last 4 games as well. So scoring a fair amount of tries there. The Titans, they're allowing tries to the left wingers and also the fullbacks as well. Sea Eagles, they're hard to currently read, but Turbo 1 plus try in 4 of his last 6 games, and they're allowing tries to the right winger and fullback. For the Storm, they've held teams to 12 points or less. That's irrelevant after last weekend. There was 12 points or less in 3 of the last 4 games and 18 points last week. Munster, 1 try in his last 3 of his last 4 games, and Meany as well, 1 plus try in 3 of his last 4 games as well. The Knights, Marju, 1 plus try in 3 of his last 4, and Big Dom Young, 8 tries in his last 5 games. And they were actually allowing tries to right wingers as well, which is obviously Marju's side. The Warriors, they've scored 22 plus points in their last 3 games. Cozzy 1 plus try in 4 of his last 5, and they're allowing tries to the left winger and also through the middle as well, which is a bit of worry with the forward pack they do have. The Cowboys, they've actually only scored 20 plus points in 2 of their 7 games this season so far after scoring a lot of points last season. And Valentine Holmes 1 plus try in his last 2 games, and they're also allowing tries to the right winger, which is Tuolangi's side and that edge. The Eels, they've actually scored 20 plus points in 5 of the last 6 games. As always, they know how to score the ball. Sivo 9 tries in his last 6 games, and also 1 plus try in 5 of his last 6. Bensini 1 plus try in his last 2 games, and they're actually allowing tries to the left centre, which is obviously out that side where they're quite young out there. The Panthers, they haven't allowed more than 17 points this season, which will be quite a stat. And then games have either been a blowout or within 1 to 6 points. So interesting coming up against the South this week. And 1 plus try in his last 2 games as well. The South, they've had their last 2 games, big wins, 34 and 22. Walker 5 tries in his last 4 games. 1 plus try in his last 4 games as well. Graham 6 tries in 3 games. And 1 plus try in his last 3 games as well. Mitchell 1 plus try in his last 2 games, and they're allowing tries on that right edge, which is Johnston's wing. The Dragons, they've scored 18 points or less in 4 of the last 5 games. Hunt's actually scored in 3 of his last 4. The Dragons left winger, obviously they've chopped and changed that. They've actually scored in their last 3 games, and they're allowing tries to the fullback in their last 5 games, so quite a good start there, and also allowing tries to the right edge in their last 5 games as well. The Roosters, they've allowed 20 plus points in their last 3 games, and their last 3 losses this season that they've had have all been by 10 plus points. So quite big losses there. Jackson Paulo 1 plus try in 4 of his last 5 games, and they're allowing tries to the left winger and also allowing tries to the 6 in their last 2 games, which have been Moylan and Munster. The Tigers, they've lost all 6 games to kick off the season, obviously had the bye last week, and they're allowing tries to the right centre in the last 2 games and also right edge back rower in their last 2 games as well. Looking quickly, topic 3 into the team-by-team standings update. So just having a quick look into where teams currently stand. Obviously, the Broncos are first, 6 wins, 1 loss. Panthers are next, 4 and 2. The Warriors are third and Manly are fourth. South Sydney 5th, Sharks 6th, Storm 7th. The Dolphins are there at 8th. And then just out of the 8 is obviously the Roosters 3 and 3, Titans 3 and 3, the Knights 3, 1 and 3 as well. And then also the Eels 3 and 4 in 12th. Dragons, Raiders, Bulldogs, Cowboys, and the Tigers. So the Cowboys are the big mover there. They're down in 16th after finishing up the top 4 last season. But apart from that, obviously the Tigers, Bulldogs, the Dragons we expect to be down there. But a few of those might chop and change in the coming weeks as well. Moving on to the round 8 preview. So looking at Thursday's game, South Sydney playing Penrith at a core stadium. Obviously a big out for both sides. It's Kaloa Matangi and Liam Martin. In will come for South into that position for Kaloa Matangi. Into the 11 spot is Cheekham. And onto the bench is Saleh and Mawali, as along with Luke Fafita and Cartwright. In for the Panthers in the 11 spot is Sorensen. And then they bring in Lindsay Smith there. Looking into this one, what can we say? It's going to be an interesting contest after the South has smashed their last 2 sides and playing those bottom 8 sides, and then the Panthers obviously last week playing the Knights and didn't perform too well. Some stats here: the Rabbitohs haven't defeated the Panthers at a core stadium since 2017. The Panthers actually won 10 of the last 11 against South. And then Stephen Crichton scored 7 tries his past 8 games against South as well. So a couple of, interesting statistics there. Looking at their last few matchups as well. We had, Penrith beating them in March last year. This year already, 16-10. That was at home. And then last season, obviously 32-12. Obviously a couple of matchups prior to that as well. For this one, look, it's hard to go away from the Panthers, especially after they lost last week they only won by a point last week against Newcastle. And then looking at South against those top-ended sides so far this season, they beat the Sharks in round 1. They did lose round 2 against the Panthers. Lost round 3 against the Roosters, only beat Manly by a point, lost to the Storm. And then they've had their last 2 games where it's been big wins against the Bulldogs and Dolphins. So we see this one going the Panthers' way, especially after how they played last week, backing up. Obviously, they beat South in round 2, and hopefully their offense and attack clicks into gear in this one. Next game is Friday night. They head up to Darwin. That is the Eels and the Broncos. Obviously, the Eels 12, Broncos first. No changes as of now for the Eels, but they have brought in Simonson in the obviously reserves as well. For the Broncos, Jordan Pereira goes out. Corey Oates does come in, and then they move Arthars into the reserves, so as the 18. This one's an interesting one because it is up and down. It'll be slippery and wet. Whoever can control and hang on to the ball and have less errors, that's the key to this one. But with the Broncos 4-pack and how slippery it'll be up there, we see them getting the win, as well as how the Eels have played against those top-end sides so far. Losses to the Storm, Sharks, Seagulls, win against the Panthers, lost against the Roosters, close win against the Tigers, and they beat the Bulldogs last week. They've clicked into gear in the last 2 weeks, but it's been against lower opposition, so it'll be interesting to see how they've clicked in, if they have clicked in gear against that top opposition, or if Brisbane roll over them in this one, especially with the Broncos starting 6 and 7 to start this season. Moving on to Saturday's game, so we've got the Bulldogs against the Sharks at a core stadium. This should be an easy Sharks win. The Sharks could put a score on this one as well. Out to Karaz for the Bulldogs. The Sharks remain unchanged. We see the Sharks putting a score on in this one. Not too much else to go into in that one. The Cowboys against the Knights. This is an interesting contest of the Cowboys. As we mentioned, 16th spot. The Knights are playing okay football at the moment as well. Out is Tamalolo for the Cowboys, and just their 4-pack is decimated, whereas the Knights gain back the services to Saifidi, and also Ponga comes in at number 6. Which is obviously a couple of really good ins. And just that 4-pack for the Knights is playing super well, as long as their backs are also performing well. So look, we're actually leading the way of the Knights in this one, even though it is an evening Saturday game. The squad that the Knights having compared to that of the Cowboys, we actually like them. Jordan McLean has been listed to play. We'll see if that is confirmed, but it looks to be confirmed at the moment. But we'll have to go into that in a bit more depth there. Dolphins, the Titans on the Sunday. Dolphins 176, Titans 207. Currently, in comes Kafusi, out goes Kenny Bromwich, also Jared Wallace back in. So a couple of good ins there for the Dolphins. Shoop goes out, as well as for Malawi. McIntyre comes in. AJ Brimson also is listed, but he's in the reserves, so he may be 50-50 or a game time decision. We like the Dolphins in this one, just with that 4-pack and experience, but Titans will be able to put a score on. Look for both teams to score 20 plus in this one, I reckon, and a nice afternoon in Brisbane, most likely there. Tigers and the Seagulls, similar to the Sharks and Bulldogs game. The Tigers still haven't got a win. They've changed a lot of things around again, so who knows where they're going with. Viaga and Tuilagi out for the Seagulls. Schuster is named as well. Garrett back in. We'll see if Schuster does play. He's been questionable the last few weeks, but this should be a Seagulls humping in this one. This is at Campbelltown Sports Stadium, so out there, but Manly should get the win in this matchup. Moving to Tuesday's game, so we've got the Anzac Day games. The Sydney Roosters and St. George, and also the Storm and Warriors. The Sydney Roosters should get the win in this one at Allianz Stadium against St. George. And the Storm New Zealand one, that'll be a good contest. Look for a low-scoring battle, I reckon. Warriors plus 12.5 also looks good. I don't expect the Storm to blow out the Warriors with the way that both teams have been playing defense, so look for a tight contest. The Storm should get the win at home, but it'll be a tight tussle, we think. Looking at topic 5, the round 8 best bets. So as we already mentioned, sort of gone through, the Panthers, Broncos, Sharks, I think Knights, Titans, potentially 50-50 with the Dolphins. But looking at the Dolphins squad, we're leaning towards the Dolphins in that one. The Sea Eagles, Roosters and Storm, they're our head-to-heads, but also looking at plus lines in those games as well. Our best bets for the weekend, so the Sharks have won 9 of the last 11 versus Canterbury. So obviously them head-to-head. The Tigers have lost 8 in the last 19 games, so looking at Manly head-to-head. The Roosters, they've won their last 7 games at home versus St. George, so they're head-to-head. And then the Storm won their last 11 games versus New Zealand. So for a 4-leg multi, that's 236, but that's our sort of best bet for head-to-heads over the weekend. For Thursday night's game, Graham 1+ try in his last 3 games, and To'o 1+ try in his last 2 games. That'll get you 550 there for a 2-leg multi. Friday night's game, Sevo and Cobbo. Sevo 1+ try in 5 of his last 6. Cobbo 1+ try in his last 5 games. That'll get you 325. For Saturday's games, Bulldogs 16 points or less in their last 4 games. And then Mulatalo 1+ try in his last 5 games. Holmes 1+ try in his last 2 games, and Dom Young 8 tries in his last 5 games. That will get you 845 combining those 4 together. Sunday's games, the Titans, they've allowed 24+ points in 4 of the last 5 games. W.A. Fado 1+ try in 6 of his last 7. Canberra 1+ try in 4 of his last 5. Turbo 1+ try in 4 of his last 6. That'll get you 706. Combine those 4 together. And last but not least, Tuesday games, the Dragons have scored 18 points or less in 4 of the last 5. Jackson Paulo 1+ try in 4 of his last 5. Nick Meaney 1+ try in 3 of his last 4. And Cozzy on the wing there, 1+ try in 4 of his last 5. 1045 there with those 4 combined together. That is all for this week though. Feel free to like, follow and subscribe as per usual on Facebook, Instagram, subscribe to the YouTube. Follow obviously on the podcast, download all that sort of jazz. Feel free to shoot me a message if you have any questions for the weekend ahead of Rugby League. But that is all for this week. Enjoy your weekend. Cheers.